Hi everyone, my name's Nicole. I'm the Managing Consultant with Liquid HR. Today I'm really excited to take you through the first part of our webinar series for employers, making sure that you have the knowledge and skills necessary for employing staff and ensuring that you're compliant with the legislation. So our first session today will be focusing on awards, enterprise agreements, award-free employees, as well as a general introduction to the Fair Work Act, which is the federal legislation that governs employment within Australia. So specifically what we're going to be focusing on, there have really been a number of changes to our industrial relations system over the years. And as employers, it can be really challenging to ensure that you're compliant, particularly if it's not an area of specialty for you. So Liquid HR have created a 7-part webinar series to educate you on your requirements and ensure you have all the necessary knowledge to employ staff. So our session today is going to focus on modern award overview, enterprise agreement overview and what the difference is between the two, how to determine award coverage, the classification and the pay rates to your employees. So in Australia, we have a system of minimum conditions of employment and you need to ensure you're meeting those requirements. We're going to have a look at what are annualised salaries and how they can be utilised in your workplace. We'll have a look at individual flexibility provisions in awards and how they can apply to your workplace. This is a provision not many employers utilise, but can actually really be a great way of creating some flexibility. We'll have a look at what happens to employees who are not covered by an award. These are referred to as award-free employees and how their pay rates are determined. We'll have a look at the high income threshold and why it's important, as well as an introduction to the Fair Work Act. So who am I? As I mentioned earlier, my name's Nicole. I'm the Managing Consultant with Liquid HR. I have a background in HR and industrial relations, and an area I'm quite passionate about is partnering with employers to give them the skills and educate them on the areas that they need to be aware of across the employment relations framework. Okay, so if we start off by looking at modern awards, prior to the introduction of modern awards, which happened in January 2010, so if you open up a modern award, you'll always see that it states 2010 at the start. There was over 4,500 federal and state awards. The system was really complex, and for many employers, it was incredibly difficult to work out what award applied at their workplace. So this has now been simplified, and there are currently 122 modern awards, which is a big difference to the 4,500 that were previously in place. It's important to be aware of as an employer, you can't contract out of a modern award. So if a modern award applies to your workplace and your employees, you need to ensure that you're meeting those minimum conditions. So modern awards cover many industries and occupations, and it's not odd for employers to have numerous modern awards that cover their employees at any given time. There are some occupations that are not covered by modern awards. For example, a HR manager. These employees are referred to as award-free, so we'll touch on this a little bit later. There may be some employees in your workplace that fall in that category. So the common question that we always get is, how do I work out what award applies to my employees and where do I even start? The best way I explain it to employers is to break it down into a number of steps, and this helps you make sure you're getting the appropriate award coverage and meeting your minimum conditions. So step 1, you need to determine whether a modern award applies to the industry in which you operate. So to do this, you can search each of the awards available at the link on the previous slide, and a good place to start is the title of the award. So for example, those in the hospitality industry, there's a Hospitality Industry General Award. Once you've been able to do that, and you've been able to narrow it down to a few applicable awards, you can then look at the coverage clause in the award. So this is normally clause 4 in the award, and this clause will describe who the award covers. This process, to be honest, can sometimes be confusing. Liquid HR can help you determine award coverage, and Fair Work also have a number of resources that can support with this. So the next step, once you've identified the award that covers your industry, to determine the employee's rate of pay, you need to work out the appropriate classification for the work they perform. So many employers get the award, they go to the minimum wage clause and they say, oh, okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, oh, I think they're about a level 3, and they start applying that. It's really important that you read the classifications, which are in Schedule B at the back of the award, to match up the work the employee is performing and the descriptions in the award. Once you've done that and you've identified the classification, you then go back and look at the minimum wage clause. It will tell you the minimum rate an employee can be paid for performing a particular role. The next step is to review all the other clauses in the award. So don't fall into the trap of just looking at what the minimum wage is that you have to pay, or the minimum hourly rate. You need to ensure that you're applying the appropriate penalties, allowances, and terms and conditions. By terms and conditions, I mean there's break clauses in an award and other provisions that you need to be aware of. A few important tips. Make sure you look for industry coverage before occupation coverage. For example, you could accidentally be fooled into thinking that the Clerk's Private Sector Award covers your clerical staff, when in fact there are over 22 industry awards that contain clerical classifications. For example, if you had a clerical employee employed in the aged care industry, they would be covered by the Aged Care Award instead of the Clerk's Private Sector Award, as the industry award contains clerical employee classifications. Another tip, some modern awards in specific occupations, for example, an employer in the hospitality industry may employ an electrician. However, there are no classifications for electricians in the hospitality industry general award, so the electrician would be covered by the Manufacturing and Associated Industries and Occupations Award, which has a classification for electricians. Another point that we often have when we have employers call up and we're looking at their award coverage is sometimes employees can perform a wide variety of duties. The Commission, which is the Fair Work Commission, has generally taken the position of looking at what work the employee does the majority of the time. The other way you can do it is you apply whichever is the higher of the two rates, so the employee is not worse off. There is also a miscellaneous award 2010. The intent of this award was to capture the employees that were previously covered by the 4,500 old awards that did not fall into one of the new modern awards. You can imagine when they went from 4,500 to 122 that there was a lot of reduction taking place. The application of this award has been widely debated over the last 8 to 9 years, and we believe that will continue to be the case. So if you do have some employees and you're unsure whether they are covered by an award and you don't think you can find the appropriate classification or the coverage, please reach out to us and we can definitely help you with that. So the next part that I want to look at was annualised salaries. So some awards contain annualised salary provisions, which clearly state the percentage loading an employee needs to be paid so they can receive an annual salary. So for example, there's some awards that will say if you pay 25% above the minimum wage, that will cover the employee's penalty rates, annual leave loading, and other conditions within the award. If the award that applies to your employees in your workplace does not contain an annualised salary provision clause, then you can use the individual flexibility agreement clause, which is normally found in clause 7 of the award. This clause states, an employer and an individual employee can agree to vary the terms of the award relating to arrangements for when work is performed, overtime rates, penalty rates, allowances, and annual leave loading. There are specific conditions that need to be met to put this into place. It needs to be a genuine agreement between both parties, so the employer can't force the employee to sign an individual flexibility agreement. And the agreement can only be made after the employee has commenced employment, so it can't be offered upon commencement. The agreement also needs to be in writing, and the employer must take all reasonable steps to ensure the employee understands it. So for example, if English is a second language, it's important that you take the steps to ensure it is explained to the employee verbally so they clearly understand what they're signing. The employee also must be better off overall under the agreement. So you can't pay an annualised salary to reduce an employee's wages under an award. The benefit of an annualised salary is it means that employees get a consistent wage every week instead of their wage fluctuating from week to week. When you do put the agreement in writing, it needs to specify the employer's name, so your name, the employee's name, what terms of the award are being varied and how, and it must outline how the employee is better off overall and the commencement date of the agreement. Both parties then sign the agreement. In terms of termination of the agreement, it can be terminated any time by agreement between both parties, or if one party wants to terminate it, by providing 13 weeks notice. Uh, Liquid HR does have a template individual flexibility agreement that we can provide to you if you do need support, and it really outlines each of those steps to make sure that you're doing everything that you need to do to be compliant. The next part to be aware of is the high income threshold. So, awards don't apply to high income employees. So, a high income employee is an employee who has accepted a written guarantee of annual earnings and is guaranteed to earn an annual amount which is more than the high income threshold. So, as at 1 July 2018, the high income threshold is $145,400. It increases each year. So we'll expect to see an increase on 1 July 2019. So to determine an employee's earnings for the purpose of the high income threshold, you need to include the employee's wages and the agreed value of non-monetary benefits. So the things that you wouldn't include is commissions, incentive-based payments, overtime unless it's guaranteed overtime, reimbursements or superannuation. In addition to not being covered by an award, high income employees above the threshold that I discussed earlier, they can't make a claim for unfair dismissal if they're terminated for poor performance or conduct. It's important to note here, though, and many employers don't realise this, is nothing can stop them from making an unlawful termination claim, or what's referred to as an adverse action claim, which is if they have been terminated on unlawful grounds, so race, gender, marital status, temporary illness. There's a big list which is covered there. So it's important if you are looking at terminating an employee who is above that high income threshold that you just reach out to us so we can talk through the steps and what you need to be aware of in that place. The Fair Work Act. So the Fair Work Act is the primary piece of legislation that governs employment in Australia. It can be accessed at the link there on your slide. It's important to be aware of what the Fair Work Act covers. So that's it for today. Don't miss our next webinar where we're going to cover leave and the National Employment Standards in further detail to make sure that you're meeting all of those conditions. If you have any questions, please get in touch with us. Our contact details are on the page. You can call us on the phone number or email us via our inquiries email address. We always love to obviously help our employers and partner with them to be able to understand their business and how we can assist. Really appreciate your time and thank you for putting up with my voice all the way to the end of this webinar, and I look forward to speaking with you all soon.